I spoke Thursday with Congressman André Carson, who voted against the funding package for DHS and ICE last week.
I refuse to rubber stamp more lawlessness by ICE. And today, I'm even calling for the unlawful assaults by ICE to end, calling for ICE as we know it to no longer exist. And so operations by ICE in these urban areas, particularly Minneapolis, they must be suspended. We saw the murder of Alex Preddy. It shows that without a doubt, this very rogue agency is out of control.
There's talk of potentially a deal that would separate out DHS funding from the rest of the spending bill, which would then have to go back to the House. Across the aisle, Indiana Senator Jim Banks put out a social media post today saying Democrats are willing to shut down the government because they prioritize these immigrants who aren't here legally over American citizens. He called that shameful. In his words, what's your response to that?
Well, it's simply untrue. I think that this shutdown has to be talked through. This would be a partial shutdown, so it would have minimal impact. And you know, no one wants to see a shutdown, but we simply cannot continue to fund this administration's business as usual. I voted against DHS funding in the House. And hopefully Senate Democrats will oppose DHS funding, and some Senate Republicans should join us.
We also spoke recently with another member of the Indiana delegation, Congressman Jim Baird, and here's what he had to say about all this.
Do you share any of their concerns that perhaps some of these policies have gone too far?
Well, you know, you always need to be aware of the consequences of the actions that you take. But when you think about we're removing the worst of the worst of this 20 million or so, or how many ever that we've come across the border.
We've also heard of instances where U.S. citizens have been taken into custody by ICE. Does that concern you?
Well, you really don't know for sure exactly what happened. So I like to make sure that I remember in combat, they say the first reports are never accurate. So I want to make sure we get the appropriate information and make sure we're treating people fairly.
Congressman, what's your response to what Congressman Baird said there, and this notion that the plan was to target the worst of the worst, so to speak?
Well, if only that were true in this instance. I think the original charter from ICE enacted by Congress was meant to deal with that segment of society, was to deal with criminal enterprises shipping contraband into our country. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing an agency that has devolved into a rogue militia, a gang of sorts. And, you know, ICE is really imposing domestic terrorism on U.S. communities and families. ICE is inflicting psychological terror on Americans, physical terror on Americans. So all ICE enforcement operations must stop right now. We are bearing witness to atrocities and building a case to prosecute. There has to be and must be federal consequences for these actions.